Hi everyone, welcome back to this episode of Mentally Strong Mums. My name is Alina Bishop, and this one is a good one. So I've had a couple sessions with obviously clients come in lately, and this has been a little bit of a reoccurring theme. So I think any help within relationships is good help, and to try and be able to get back on the same page, have a look at the research and science, don't reinvent the wheel, what works and what are really known concepts out there that are obvious for a lot of people that might not be, that aren't in that world, if that makes any sense. So for me, especially as a relationship therapy, client, all of that kind of stuff, when I work with couples, I want to be able to tell them these things so that they can then help their own self-awareness within the relationship, wondering with curiosity, I wonder why I do that. And also, I wonder if it's a learned behavior because if my template of a relationship I learnt from my parents might not be relevant to this day and age, and then especially if my children are watching, what kind of example of a healthy relationship or unhealthy relationship am I demonstrating to my offspring? Monkey see, monkey do. So whatever you say and do, they're going to think that's normal. That's how we treat each other. That's what a relationship looks like. And so sometimes it looks like repeating those patterns. So if I can kind of do anything to be able to help support this, obviously I will, especially with all the couples that I see, whether they're married or they're newly together or they've been together for 50 years or there's infidelity, the people that I've seen, even poly people that come in, we understand all of this as well. And all of this really is just a really simple foundation of respect within the relationship and how we want to treat each other, right? And if your partner or yourself is impacted by mental health, personality disorders, even sometimes things like neurodiverse, or even my previous episode, what we talk about PMDD. Sometimes all of those lovely pleasantries go out the window because it feels like we're just drowning every day and all we're doing is just struggling. And I hate that saying, we hurt the people closest to us. You hurt the people that are around you, right? You're so lovely to everyone else, but you take your partner's your punching bag. And with all of this, I really, really, really want to emphasize and inspire. Please don't do that. The people around you, the closest people to you, you shouldn't be treating like that. The closest people to you, you should be protecting and loving and supporting and nurturing. Everyone else you can treat like that. But if you've chosen a little beautiful family and had an offspring together, you need to be able to look after and nurture and start with positive habits. And once you can understand these behaviors that can predict divorce, predict separation, predict uncomfortableness, and within relationships, it's actually huge. Before I begin, I'll always like a little joke. And I heard this thing and it always sticks in the back of my mind. If your marriage isn't hanging by a thread, is it even a marriage? And we all go through peaks and troughs in our relationship, all the highs and lows, right? But we want to be able to do our best if we are in a healthy relationship to kind of move forward and protect ourselves the best way that we can. And knowledge is power. So, this episode, we want to be able to unpack research from these world-renowned psychologists, Dr. John and Julie Gottman, and they're based in America. They started the Gottman Institute, which is one of the largest relationship institutes. And even though they're American, some things I think are relevant to our culture and some things aren't, right? But for them, the Gottmans, after studying thousands of couples over decades, they were able to put down to four toxic communication patterns. And everything comes down to communication. That's simple. Everything in your relationship comes down to communication. I'm going to add my two at the end of this because, I see it more often and I know when it starts to crumble. And when it starts to crumble, these things happen afterwards, right? So, getting back to the Gottmans, they call this the Four Horsemen, that they see how they assume because of their research that these four things predict divorce, and they reckon with over 90% accuracy, right? So, there's also antidotes for all of this. So even though it's going to sound negative and heavy, it's also going to be lighthearted and how we can change it and empower you to be able to do that. And obviously, if this is really impactful and important and a little revelation for you, share it with your partner so that they can listen to it as well. All right. So these Gottmans, I like to call them the Gottmans, have done so much research that they have been able to put out this statement to say that they can predict divorce with over 90% accuracy just by watching how couples communicate, specifically argue, right? So the first is criticism. You know yourself, it's not nice to feel like someone's constantly criticizing you. You never listen. You always mess it up. How come you always do that, right? That's the first predictor of divorce. It's criticism. It's like someone's picking you and it's never good enough. And even when you try, they don't see what you do, they only see how you do it wrong. It attacks the person, not the behavior. So it creates shame and then defensiveness and then emotional shutdown. Or it will do the cycle of stuck, which I've created. And the cycle of stuck is, oh, we'll talk about that later. It's about being, when you feel like someone's criticizing you, instead of being receptive, you can't because you're dysregulated. So then you're defensive, right? And then it's already this power dynamic of we're not there for each other. We don't see each other the best way that we can. So it's this stuck pattern of not feeling good enough, not feeling emotionally safe, not feeling validated, not feeling heard. And so it's just this, right? So it's really sad when I feel like you never see me for who I am and what I do and all the positive things. You only see me because of when I don't do it right or when I'm doing it wrong or when I'm not meeting your needs. Using those absolute terms, you always mess it up or you never help me. And you're like, well, that's not true. I do help sometimes, right? So with that, the antidote is to use little, and they call it startups with I statement. So you focus on expressing your feelings and your needs. So I feel overwhelmed when the kitchen is messy. Can we figure out a routine together, right? So I felt this way when you did this specific thing. So please, I need this outcome. So that can be really good as well. But sometimes, especially with couples, their problem is I don't know what I need. Or I've built it up, I've built it up, I've built it up, I've built it up, and now it's just an explosion, right? Number two is contempt. So contempt looks like eye rolling, sarcasm, name calling, disrespect. Sometimes it's also those passive aggressive little comments as well, right? And obviously, it's toxic because it conveys disgust as well as superiority, right? There might be motives for why the other person is doing that because they're trying to avoid conflict or they've been bottling things up for such a long time. They don't have the correct communication skills. So then, because of that, it then shows up as this contempt, which is eye rolling, sarcasm, passive aggressive, right? And we've all been there. No, when someone's done that to me, when I'm talking to someone and they roll their eyes at me, and I'm like, no, right? So when Gottman Institute, with all of their research, found that couples with contempt were more likely to get sick because it suppresses immunity, and that's to do with the nervous system as well, right? So, with the antidote, being able to build a culture of appreciation, focus on what your partner does right, but also for you, if you're unable to overtly ask for what you need or say when things upset you or have a conversation and articulate it. These are like covert ways of contempt, the eye rolling, the sarcasm, the name calling, the passive aggressive stuff. And it's not nice when you're in a relationship where someone does that constantly because technically that's emotional abuse. Okay. So we need to be able to kind of stop all of that stuff and see each other for positive ways and how to communicate when it's negative because that's the key. And if you've never learned that and if you've never had a good template, it can be really, really uncomfortable and feel awful, especially if that's what my caregiver did. That's all I know, and I literally feel like I'm repeating their cycles. Number three is defensive, right? It's not my fault. You're the one that always did this. Yours, and sometimes the defensiveness is when someone's coming to you to talk about something, or when someone's trying to be vulnerable, or even if you perceive, which might be correct, but it might not be, criticism. So everything's about your perception. We need to get to the bigger perspective, like a seagull, but my perception is that you're criticizing me. And so what I do then is I'm defensive. It's not my fault, but yeah, but you did this. I only do that because of, right? That doesn't help. Because if the other person's trying to be vulnerable and connecting, then you're defensive, which then makes them shut down. So why am I defensive? There's a book, and it's by Dr. Gabor Mate. He's written a book called Scattered Minds, and the book is essentially about neurodiverse ADD kind of stuff and how essentially those people are conditioned, all of that, and how sometimes because of the way that we've been raised and the way that it's trauma and the way that our brain works in terms of executive functioning, how it's more likely that these people are more predisposed to kind of being that really defensive. So if you're able to do your own individual work about why I do this, it's these reoccurring fights with my partner that I and that's what happens within relationships. Sometimes it feels like it's just these reoccurring arguments. Come in and I'll help you break the cycle. Or go find someone who understands all of this, Israel. Anyone that's a couples or relationship therapist, Gottman should be their basis of understanding and framework for work. And even you, right? Number four is stonewalling. Okay. Stonewalling looks like shutting down, walking away, and the silent treatment. Okay. So it's painful because their other partner feels abandoned, and the person that's stonewalling is often physiologically overwhelmed. So, from my perspective, being trauma informed, there's two different types of stonewalling for me, right? So, one is where it's on purpose, I'm a narcissist, or I'm trying to hurt you, or it's manipulation, or it's punishment, and I'm purposely stonewalling you and not talking to you because how dare you, you don't deserve it, and that's my way of punishing you, right? Stonewalling. That's the one that's really awful. The other one, example of stonewalling, is when my nervous system is completely dysregulated and I'm frozen. You know, freeze. And I can't think, I can't talk, I can't communicate, I shut down, I need to leave, I want to, and I can't do conflict. I can't, right? I can't, and I don't know how to do that. So sometimes it's really difficult if your partner, when they perceive, it's that perception again, not perspective, perception, when they perceive that there's conflict coming or you're angry at me or I'm going to get punished, that then can be a trauma response of completely shutting down and not wanting to know or see anything, right? So I think even though the Gottmans have written these as four different predictors of divorce, I think really it's important to put into context about trauma and your nervous system. So even though I kind of agree, I still disagree with it as well. But it is good to be aware of that this is what they believe, right? So, from my perspective, I have an additional two that kind of start before all of this. You remember in the beginning of your relationship where you love the other person so much, where you had those rose-colored glasses, where you felt like they made you a better person and they inspired you to do better in your life. You remember those times? Remember that? Sometimes after a while within the relationship and the rose-colored glasses are off, I see you for who you are because either you can't keep up the facade or you're a human, right? And I then lose respect for you or I don't admire you anymore. Those for me are the two biggest things because if I lose respect for you, and if I losing respect, well, you're an absent parent or you're not helping the way that I thought we were going to be a team. You don't care about me at all because you prioritize everyone else. You don't make me feel special and you avoid me like the plague, even when I'm trying my best, right? And when you lose respect for someone, it's very, very hard for you to be able to gain that respect back, especially if the other person doesn't know that you've lost respect for them, right? And then inherently and naturally, that's what you're going to do, whether to their face, criticism, contempt, defensive, or stonewalling, or even inside, yeah, cool, whatever. But emotionally, you've checked out of the relationship and you're pretty much ready to either move on or just figure out how long I can stay in this until it's time for my kids to be older so that I can leave, right? It would be really good, even though I have kind of trash talk the Gottmans for a little bit. I don't, not really, but you know what I mean. I do love, love, love their concept, and it's called rupture and repair. I'm pretty sure they didn't come up with rupture and repair. I'm pretty sure they got it from somewhere else. I read somewhere, but whatever. Rupture essentially is conflict. Think of a volcano, so we think in pictures. Think of a volcano of rupture. And every single relationship you have, there's always going to be ruptures and conflict or disagreements or differing of opinion, whether it be friendships, romantic, platonic, work, or even your kids. Every time there's always going to be a rupture, right? Which is like the volcano going off. Healthy communication and healthy relationships is learning how to repair. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see my hand movements for this, right? And it's essentially my left hand looking like a duck beak going quack quack, but that's the rupture of a volcano. And then the other hand looks like a cup and it goes over the top of that little duck beak volcano to be able to make it okay and nurture it and smooth it out so that there's no painful rupture of the volcano lava anymore because it's been protected and repaired by the other hand, right? So conflict is normal and healthy. Conflict is inevitable, whether it be with your partner or with your kids. You just have to be able to figure out how to rupture and repair the rupture, right? So, how to be able to most effectively rupture. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Please give me a cuddle. Is there anything you need? Do you need comfort solutions or silence? I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Vice versa. I need this, or can you make me feel that, or all I want is a cuddle, or can you please listen to me, right? How do we then repair? And even if you want to practice this with your kids, I'm notorious at nighttime to be cranky, right? And I am with my kids because it's nighttime and you won't go to bed, and I want to go to bed. Like the little ones that want to play up and have a party at night, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to sleep. So at nighttime, I'm cranky. So then sometimes if I'm cranky because I'm tired, it's not about you, it's about me. So you haven't done anything wrong besides being awake past your bedtime. But how do I then learn to be able to rupture these upsetting relationships as well, during these times? So learning yourself as well. They also have this thing and it's called bids for connection. So it's small moments of reaching out to be together. So eye contact or jokes or touch, right? In my with my clients, I use the analogy of a fishing rod. So it's like you're going fishing, these little bids for attention to try and connect. But sometimes you use the wrong bait and the other person doesn't know that you're asking for affection, right? So that's huge too. So how are we able to keep on keeping the rose-colored glasses on within our relationship, trying to recover, to have that respect and admiration for our partner, learning proper communication, and then maybe even understanding these are faulty things that you've learnt from your caregivers and your repeating cycles. I don't want to do that anymore. So how are you able to then clear all of your own trauma and learn healthy communication styles, right? So because you're parenting with a partner, especially if you're still together with your partner who's the father of your child, or even if you're co-parenting because you still need to be able to cooperate and communicate, right? These dynamics deeply affect the emotional climate of my home. If the home is peaceful, the kids can develop their brains normally and emotionally normally, right? But if there's conflict and everyone's on eggshells and there's always disagreements, your kids' body and brains emotionally aren't able to completely relax because, and that then impacts their development, their brain development, physical and emotional development, right? So even if you're a single mum and you're dating again, right? These are really good things to help understand if you're dating a partner. Are they defensive? Is there contempt? Are these little underlying things? Are you able to put up boundaries and rupture and repair it? Or are these things, are they so early in the relationship, I'm not, I'm out. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, sometimes if you're going through a divorce, this episode can help unpack what might have gone wrong within the relationship so that it can help break patterns moving forward. It's also really, really beneficial if the other person's on board, if you're both adamant we're going through a separation. There's a thing called a healing separation, which is really, really lovely, beneficial. So have a look at that as well. So if that's what you're going through currently, have a look for a healing separation so we can both get on the same page and have a better communication, right? So especially if you want to look at the statistics with the Gottmans, 69% of conflict is perpetual. It's not about solving, it's about managing, rupturing, repairing, and moving forward, right? How can we address this and move forward? If it's a reoccurring problem, it means that it hasn't been resolved correctly. So couples who stay together respond positively 80% of each other's bids for connection. Going fishing, how often do they take the bait? Am I using the right bait? Do I know what my partner needs? Do I know their love language? How do I make them feel special? What do I need? How do I feel special? Can I articulate that to my partner? Can we essentially have a cheat sheet for each other about what we need, right? So, mums and hubbies, if you're listening to this together, your relationship doesn't have to be perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect relationship. Conflict is normal and healthy. We just have to learn how to rupture and repair as well as communicate, right? And if you know that your rose-colored glasses are off and you see them and you lose respect for them or admiration, we need to figure out then what it looks like moving forward, okay? So for you, with all of this, listen to it again. All of the questions that I asked throughout this episode as well, maybe you can use these as journaling prompts. So I reckon I've asked you hypothetically about 16 different questions throughout this episode. If you go back and listen and write them all down, let me know if I'm right or wrong. Right? But these are good reflective for you, right? How well do you know your partner? So even if you want to go and search free Gottman quiz, how well do you know your partner? That can also be really beneficial as well to understand the gaps in your relationship, right? You were together before the kids. You need to figure out how to stay together after the kids when they leave, when they grow up, right? So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you hanging around. I know I went on for a bit, but as I always do, have a wonderful day. Any questions, let me know, and I hope it was really beneficial. All right. Thank you. Bye.